This screencast is part 3 of our video series called Building the Nominal Test Case using Zuzena. In this video, we will focus upon adding data preparation steps to the test case we started building in part 2. At the end of the presentation, we will display links connecting you to the other videos in the series. Remember that in this video series, we're building a nominal test. The nominal test case proves that all your data warehouse transforms work as expected when given data that should load. We'll post some other videos at a future date illustrating the smaller test cases you'll need in order to demonstrate how your ETL responds when it encounters data troubled by such flaws as missing reference records or improper values. In the previous videos of this series, we provided an overview and illustrated the first steps in creating a Zuzena test case. We introduced the capabilities of the Zuzena test engine and listed the goals of the test case we're building. We also demonstrated how to create the blank test case container and label it with metadata tags. Finally, we showed how to run that test case individually and as part of a test suite. You probably noticed, however, that the test case was empty. It had no action steps. In this video, we'll add action steps to the test container that will place the right source data in the right location so that your test will have the proper starting conditions when it executes. From the Zuzena main menu, open up the test case listing window. Find the test case you want to modify and click upon its code or short name. This is the test case container just as we left it at the end of the previous video. Scroll down to the section labeled Data Defs. As you can see, there are no data prep steps declared for this test case yet. To add a data prep step, click on the green plus sign labeled Add another test case data def. Whenever you create a test case component in Zuzena, the GUI not only links it to the test case you're working on, but it also makes the component a reusable object. If the data prep action you want for this test case had already been created for another test case, you would be able to simply select it from the drop-down list shown here. Because the desired data prep step doesn't yet exist, we'll have to create it now. Click on the green plus sign next to the empty data prep step to open up an editing window. Expand the window to be full screen and start filling out the fields that define the data prep action you have in mind. Give this object a name and description so that you and other testers can incorporate it in other test cases later. Because the data we need already exists in a database of source information, we'll be using a SQL command to stage the records we need. If you had to load data from a text file or a web service, you could use a shell command to invoke a script. Name the database connector you want to submit the SQL sourcing statement to. Now enter the SQL text that will retrieve the records you want for this data prep step. Notice how we use a where constraint to retrieve only records marked for the nominal test scenario from the source data repository. Next, name the connector for the database holding the staging table you want loaded with the starting data. Here, our test source and ETL target are in the same database, so the connect string is the same as before. Name the staging table into which you want to load the source records. Zuzena will build the insert statement for you when this test case runs. Now declare the starting prefix for any testing metadata columns in the source data repository. When you put a value here, Zuzena will revisit the select command you entered above and exclude any columns that start with this prefix. This field for an excluded string is a handy feature and the reason we were able to use a select star command even though there's metadata columns in the source repository. Finally, select Yes for the Clear Insert Table option so that Zuzena will truncate the staging table each time this data prep step runs. If you left this control set to No, Zuzena would append the new source records to any data already in the target staging table. Save the test case, and you're done adding the first data prep step. Let's take a moment to examine the source data for the test and the target structure we'll be loading. If we open the Database Console window, we can list the structures for the table in the source test data repository that our data prep step will pull the staging records from. Notice that the last set of columns starting with the ACIT prefix, which stands for Automated and Continuous Integration Testing. These are the metadata columns that correspond to the metadata tags we set when we created the test container in the previous video. The values in these columns let us filter the source test records so that we can stage only the subset of data that each test requires. Here's the structure for the staging table our data prep step will be loading starting data into. Notice that it doesn't have those columns for the metadata tags. Instead, it's structured exactly like your staging tables the ETL will find in the data warehouse you're building. We can count the records in the source test data repository that we want to stage when this test case runs. Here we see that we should find 97 records in the R market table after this data prep step finishes. So let's return to Zuzena and kick off this test case with its single data staging action step. Select the test case and use the Run Immediate option from the pull-down menu. Refresh the screen to see whether this particular run was successful or not. Click on the test case code to see a listing of all the recent executions of this test case. Click on the topmost run to open the server engine console output that Zuzena captured when this test case ran. We can see in this log file many indicators concerning the execution of our staging action step and that the overall test case passed. Turning back to the database console, we can confirm what we saw in the Zuzena server console log, namely that the expected number of records now exists in the staging table. Most test cases require several staging actions before they are ready to call the ETL modules they intend to test. Let's quickly look at our same test case after we've given it a full complement of data prep steps. Here you can see that we've added 4 more staging actions, 2 that stage reference data for loading into dimension tables, and 2 that stage transaction data that will be transformed into the fact table. When we open up one of the transaction data staging steps, we see that the test author gave it 2 metadata filters. This portion of the where clause selects for nominal data as before, but the second one will cause the test case to stage only records that pertain to a particular time point, perhaps the day 2 records for the data warehouse. Note that the curly braces on the time point constraint means Zuzena will treat that string as a token. When the test executes, this token will be replaced with the value of the time point metadata tag that was set in the aspects section of the test container. For our example, you can see that the value was set to be January 7th, 2001. Let's execute this test case now that it has all its data prep steps declared. When we open the server console log that Zuzena captures for us, we see that all 5 of the data prep steps completed successfully. Now that our test case is staging its source data properly, we're ready to add a call to the ETL modules we want to test. We'll demonstrate how to do that in the next video in this series. This third video about building a nominal test case focused upon adding data preparation steps to the test case container. First, we use the graphical user interface to open the test case container and create a data definition step within it. Next, we used a database console session to look at the source data in the repository and to confirm that the target table was empty. Third, we invoked the test case with a single data step, and after it was complete, return to the database console to confirm that the right number of records have been loaded into the data warehouse staging table. Finally, we reran the test case after 4 more data prep steps have been added, but this time we opened a console log within the Zuzena GUI to confirm that the staging tables have been loaded. There are several remaining videos in this series. The next video will demonstrate adding calls to the data transformation modules so that Zuzena will invoke the exact ETL unit that you're planning to validate with the nominal test case. Use the links on this page to open other videos in this series. Be sure to contact us with questions concerning test automation for data warehousing, business intelligence, and big data application development. Thanks for watching the screencast, and good luck with your projects.